All right, we're back. It's another episode of Different Kind of Genius. I'm your host, André Kufé. Big shout outs to our sponsors once again, Griffin Burger and the Streets Barbershop. They're holding us down. You should be holding them guys down as well. But it's back to business as usual. With me today, it's someone special. It's always someone special, but fuck, this is a man that really does dope shit for our community, so we've got to reward people like this. With me today is Matt Williams, the founder of the Chin Up program. How are you, my brother?
I'm very good. Thank you for having me.
Bro.
Appreciate your invite up to the mean streets of Highton.
Bro, the mean, tough streets of Highton,
Yeah.
where you don't really have to lock your windows, but you'll be all right.
No, I locked my car with a bike lock before I came in there, but I trust it will be safe.
No, mate, you've seen the houses around. You'll be all right.
Yeah,
You'll
I'll
be
be
all
good.
right. No, but fuck, thank you so much for coming down, my brother. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you.
And you've been highly recommended by guests that have come on before, and it's like, man, I've seen the work you've done as well. And I got put onto it through the Ishpig boys.
Yep.
I saw you did like a collab thing with Nate
Yeah.
for Chin Up.
Yeah, so we were running a program in Tani Senior,
Yeah.
and I can't remember how I got in touch with Nate. We've got some mutual connections, and a lot of the boys are keen on his stuff, and felt that there was an opportunity and maybe some synergy between us and Itchpig, and we got together and had a chat around where that might lie. And he came out and ended up doing like co-facilitating a workshop with me around. Well, there are various themes, but yeah, and he would have spoken about those when he did a podcast with you. But yeah, the kids loved it, eh?
Fucking oath. But we need to skip straight into it then. Shit, I obviously know what a man like you does, but tell the people, what do you get up to?
Yeah, so I've got, I'm a dad, I'm a brother, I'm a husband. I founded Chin Up Project, which is a project that works with young people, particularly those who are disengaged from kind of mainstream pathways and processes. So some are engaged in the justice system, many are disengaged from education or at risk of being disengaged. But we do work across, we work across a lot of different sectors and come into contact with all kinds of people. And we run workshops for them. Also, I have a Muay Thai and MMA gym in Torquay called the Boneyard Torquay, which I've been running for about 8 months now. I used to fight professionally. Now I spend most of my time coaching and helping others to realise their potential. And, between those two, between martial arts and Chin Up Project, I found that there's a lot of kind of overlap, and that there's like similar conversations to be had, and that in martial arts you often find a really good forum for carrying over the types of conversations we have in Chin Up Project. And I'm looking to do that more and more.
That's real. And then one of the realest things you just said then too was focus on helping other people find their potential. Why is that important?
I think I get a lot from it. So some of it's selfish, and that I'm fulfilling my purpose when I'm working with people. That's where I'm most comfortable. But I think I wish at times that I had someone who's in my position around when I was their age.
Fucking oath, bro.
So, therefore, I feel like I'm being kind of true to my own experience, and if I'm providing myself in that capacity.
Well, it's just offering that potential pathway that you didn't have access to when you were growing up. And I can only imagine, but I'm sure life would have been much different if there was someone around that gave, just like yourself, that gave the same time and energy that you put into kids, into yourself.
Yeah, I'm sure it would. It's but in saying that, one of the ethos of, I guess the ethos of Chin Up Project is that seeing value in our experience and recognising that our experiences for good and for bad, all the mistakes, recognising those as blessings in the end, because they help shape us and mould us to who we are today. And if I hadn't have walked the path that I had to be here today, then I wouldn't have the same insights and wisdoms about hard times to offer to young people. So And, you know, this is a funny thing, right? Like, I reckon if someone, I'm not sure if I would have been ready to hear the stuff someone like me has to say to a young person. That's the other thing too. And that, you know, it's not a Disney film. That's true for many of the young people who we work with. But it might have planted a seed that, you know, down the track, you know, might have kind of grown and growed into a fruition. Or there might have been a hard time I faced and, you know, a piece of wisdom or something that someone in my capacity had to say to me as a young person might have then provided some, you know, some benefit in that moment.
It's the truth. And it's one of those things you think about all the time, especially for like the work we do. People are like, do you see your rewards? It's like, not really. All we can do is hopefully plant the seed. And if something positive of that happens at some point in that person's life, we feel great about ourselves.
Yeah, that's it, eh? And like the amount of time that we have a young person in front of us, it ranges, you know, from say, you know, 1 hour up to about, you know, 1 hour over a 10-week period. You know, it's not a long time, you know, so it's about giving them, they often come out dripping wet with, you know, what we've had to say to them, and only a small amount of that's going to soak in. Much of it will rub off, but if we can start the conversation and work in partnership with others, and hopefully, especially if it's in a group of, we're having a conversation with a group of young people who move together, then hopefully that you get a collective cultural shift amongst a group of young people and they can carry it on themselves. I think that's when you have the most impact.
Straight up. And then not only that, like, bro, that hour and 10 minutes, 7 days a week, 24 hours in a day, it's like, if that's the only positive experience they get from that week, sick.
Yeah.
At least it's like, you know that you did your best to influence as much as you can in that small amount of time.
Yep.
Because in reality, all these kids are a product of their own environments anyway.
Yeah, 100%.
And we can say all we want, but at the end of the day, it's like they have to go home at night and go deal with all their fuckery, and it's just... All we can do is like, yeah, I've been in a similar situation because none of our experiences are ever the same.
Yep.
This is what happened with me. Do whatever you like, but just remember this is what happened to me. So if you want that for yourself, like, by all means.
Yeah. I think you're 100% right. I think allowing young people who you know, are facing challenging times or are living in hardship, an opportunity to feel valued as well. Like that sense of being felt, like feeling like someone recognises value in you, possibly for the first time, who looks like you or whose experience you can relate to, who has the distance of perspective and age, like that moment can be quite powerful, more so than offering a piece of wisdom, and go, oh shit, you know what? Maybe I do have currency. You know, maybe my experience does carry value, and that might be a door that's open for them. You know what I mean?
I do, bro. And then like that, like, tell me if I'm wrong, but what I think I gathered from that was you're almost offering opportunity to connect, and you're getting all these boys or whoever you're getting. You provide them an opportunity to connect, and hopefully you establish community. And then even if it's just a small little niche group of boys that are training through your gym, like, in my eyes, you've done great work already because you've already connected those that were struggling, brought them together, gave them a shared purpose, and that's the best you can do. Like, all the rest of that is now up to them. It's like they will make individual decisions, and all you can be there is you've opened the door. If you boys need help, ask me something. If not, do you? Yeah. It's hard to, and you know, like our gym in Torquay, there's 3 values that acted as like the pillars on which we built the foundations of the gym. And that was people, which represents community, and knowing that a gym culture, if a gym culture is strong and is positive and robust, and where, you know, the values are clear, and people feel aligned with those values and they feel a part of that community, regardless if they're a professional fighter or it's their first day, or if they're a young person coming through doing one of our programs that we run, that's what makes a really good gym, and one that
that others can derive value from, like can derive sense of meaning from, which comes into and segues into purpose, which is for me, I have found real purpose and meaning in fighting, and that in all different forms. Like fighting's just the best metaphor for hard times, right?
Straight up.
So I think about all like the colloquialisms, like pick yourself up off the mat, roll with the punches, have someone in your corner. There's a million of them, and for good reason. That I found my purpose in fighting and martial arts, and a lot of others do too. And allowing people the opportunity to find their purpose was something that was really important to me. But also that there was a forum where I could execute or I could exercise my purpose, and where there was overlap and synergy between my work with all people, with community and martial arts. And the third is perseverance. So allowing people opportunity to come in and step outside of their comfort zone and to struggle and to fail and to make mistakes, because I know that that's where people find out the most about themselves in those times. So come along. We've got a good community. We live for strong values, and we derive purpose from this. But guess what? It's going to be hard, and I wouldn't have it any other way. And we're not going to make excuses. And yeah, I think that's a good way to do things.
Bro, it's a great way to do things. And it's funny. Not funny, but I know I've become more aware of it recently. But Geelong's slowly getting, and stretches all the way across the Surf Coast, but like safe spaces for individuals. And everything that you've just like reeled off there is what creates that. A place for an individual that can come and express themselves, be comfortable in winning or losing, and then just the opportunity to provide where they find themselves. All that shit's so powerful, and I think that is one thing that we're lacking in society, is everybody's disconnected from opportunities like that. So many people would just much rather just sit at home, do fuck all, connect with people online, which is sick, but you still need to go out and eventually learn all those things anyway. And the longer we put that off, the harder it gets when we get older.
Yeah, word. Yeah, word. It's down in Torquay. I haven't spent much time in Geelong, man.
Yeah.
I haven't spent much time in.
Because you've only been here for a year, haven't you?
Yeah, 12 months. Yeah. I came from the northern suburbs of Melbourne, but like in Torquay, and I'm still getting kind of a sense of how everything works, and it's like a changing like town, right? Because like, there's a lot of new people moving through, and there's a lot of transient people through there, and like people in and out. But when I talk to young people and I talk to the wellbeing people connected to the schools, I get a sense that for teenagers who don't surf, who don't play footy, that outside of that there's a bit of a void, or like a bit of a vacuum, like a black hole that people can get sucked into, where there's a lot of toxic shit going on. And I think martial arts is potentially an answer for that, because it does, even though it's an individual pursuit, it is a team sport in a sense. It's one that provides community, and it's one in which people who haven't found a home in those other places can find one. The challenge is getting people through the door, right? Like I remember when I first started training, and not for a long time. I had too much other shit going on, but it was in Auckland with this guy called Richie Hardcore. I grew up in New Zealand, and it took me a lot of times to actually get up the courage to go along and walk in the doors,
True. How old were you roughly for this?
Oh, bro, I reckon I was probably about 19, I reckon. And then I didn't stick with it. Like I really enjoyed being there, but I had competing priorities at the time. When I moved to Australia, I started really feeling the pull to do that, train again. And I started I was working in this tattoo studio in Brunswick on Sydney Road. And this gym was recommended to me in Richmond. Tao, he coaches at Absolute now, but he had his own gym in Richmond. This is a while ago. And I caught 2 trains and then walked about 1 kilometre to get to his gym. And I went 5 times before I went through the front door. Like True. I made that journey, got anxious, got heaps of anxiety, and then came back. So, that I know better than anyone how hard it is to step through the doors. But
Big facts. But what were you anxious about?
look, I'm not sure. I was probably still, in retrospect, I was still kind of caught up in having an identity as someone that was a bit of a tough guy. And one thing that, for like in a good gym, an ego can't exist in a good gym, or it shouldn't have permission to be in there, an ego. And certainly leaders of the gym should be challenging that. And I think I had a sense that, that might be the case. And I wasn't willing to confront that yet, or to confront my own, mortality in the ring as someone who, knew how to mix it up but didn't know how to mix it up at all. Like when you step into a room full of professional fighters. So I get a sense that might have been the case,
Big facts. And then, I hear you completely. There's always someone bigger and tougher. There always is.
Yeah.
But what spun that around? What, like, on the fifth time, what made you want to walk through that door?
I don't know, man. I think it was made at some stage I must have made a commitment to myself that was going to be the time that I was going to do it. I've never been the type to kind of shy away from something like that. So, in that case, it must have been a really there must have been things going on for me that were making it harder to walk through the door. I can't really remember, man. This is a long time ago. I've been punched in the head a lot since then.
True.
Yeah.
Which makes sense. Like, with everything you've experienced, it's like there'll be parts of it that are a bit hazy. And then not only that, like, just negative time periods in our lives as well. I don't know why, but there's, for some reason, like, shit that I experienced as a child, I forget. And I don't know if it's because I've made myself forget, or it's just fucking, it is what it is. But especially through those shit times, there's a whole lot of it where it's like,
it gets a bit murky, eh? Like,
yeah,
you've only got limited hard drive space, like need to make some room for some other memories.
Literally. And then, but bro, there's so much truth to that. Like, I'm just like basing it off myself. I've moved around a lot. So, you're always meeting different people. You're always like having to learn new environments, blah, 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 blah. Like, when you do that like more than twice, shit, like some things have to almost be erased to create room for the new things that we're experiencing. And it's just, I know it's life. We're all human. It's what we have to do.
Word.
So from there, how long, because this is aside from the fighting, but when did chin up start?
So chin-ups been around for about 3 years. Prior to that, I worked as a youth worker within, I wore many different hats, but I love hats.
Bro.
I wore many hats. I did lots of roles within youth justice, so in Parkville and Malmesbury as a youth worker, and in some of the connected services like secure welfare and other places. But my journey into youth work was completely disingenuous, right? So I was bouncing at the city, and I think it's got a different name now. The bar it's on.
You were bouncing.
Yeah.
True.
So I think it was off Collins Street. Back then it was called Cabana Lounge. Before that it was called Trader Bar. It's called something new now. But I was in the daytime, during the week I was working in this shitty factory in North Melbourne, and hated doing both of those things. I just hated it, and I didn't want to work nights anymore. I hated dealing with like that bar. It was, the patrons were mostly people from the ANZ Towers. Like all these people come down with like shitloads of money, and they were painful. These groups of dudes that used to come down. I was like, fuck this. And then working in the factory sucked too, because it was a factory, and I wanted to get out. And there was a lady who told me about the youth justice facility up in Parkville, and back then it was very different than what it is now. She said, "Oh, you should try that." And I was like, "Man, what have I got to offer to?"
When you say different, though, what do you mean by different?
Well, it was run by Department of Health and Human Services.
Yeah.
Back then it was called Department of Human Services, and it was primarily a facility for young people who had received a custodial sentence, and therefore they could be addressed on the reasons that led to their offending. So it was based on rehabilitation.
Oh, true.
And like we used to rock around, like you'd just rock up in whatever clothes you wanted. I used to kick back, play PlayStation with the kids, like kick a footy around, play basketball, and then actually do meaningful case management and youth work with them. These days it's run by prisons, essentially. So and now it's got barbed wire fences. It's just completely different. Like there's no comparison.
Mm.
And when she said, "Oh, you should give it a crack," I was like, oh, I didn't think I had anything to offer, and I went to the job interview not expecting to get a gig there, but when I did, and when I worked my first couple of shifts, I found that it was my capacity to relate to the stories of young people and for them to recognise, in my experience, is a reflection of their own. And often in the moment, I was the best person then to relay them information and advice. And I realised I was really good at it and it was fulfilling. So I got into it to get out of the factory because it was, but I didn't think I had anything to offer. What I turned over was my purpose. So I worked in youth justice for almost 10 years.
Yeah, that's a big self-discovery too.
Yeah, man. And like really cut my teeth at all levels there and learn a lot about myself and a lot about working with people and what the sector needed and recognise some service gaps. And as I became further and further kind of frustrated with the way the system was going and didn't want to work in a prison, it's just not me, that I felt that I had something to offer in the community, and that took the form of Chin Up Project.
I hear that, because the red tape and what you have to deal with for all of those spaces makes it so hard for you to do what you feel is necessary.
Yeah, well, I felt it was necessary. It was also like I didn't like the culture of youth justice, and I kind of saw the writing on the wall. So I got out and felt that in the community I'd have creative autonomy over the types of conversations I could have with young people, and I could really get in and do something a little bit different, and get some of the bros who I've grown up with to get involved as well.
Straight up. And because it's an interesting one, because one thing I've come across in all my times, like working with people like that, is when we meet them in their environments, they're so much more likely to engage. And the example I'll give for that is, like, I was a skate worker. So I do local comps and shit. I just realised that's what I've said, and I have to so I do local comps and stuff. Long story short, whenever I'd be working with kids in those spaces, they were much more open to me. They were much more likely to have conversations. They were comfortable. And because I not came down to their level, but met them on their terms, meant I just got a lot more out of them.
Yeah.
And I think there was just so much power to that, instead of just trying to get 12 kids to come and meet me in just like fuck knows where. And then it's like, all right, we're all sitting down. It's like, what do we want to do? And they're all like, you should have already known, like, da-da-da-da-da. And yeah, so in what you were saying, the ability to bring kids to your gym, it's so much more powerful than trying to deal with them in a situation where it's just very hard to.
Well, with Chin Up Project, we often do. With Chin Up Project, we often are going into into their environment. So we work in schools. We work in youth. We sometimes go to youth justice. We go into community, but I think the difference is that now that Chin Up Project represents just real people and like real talk, and so we're not carrying like a company banner with us when we go. Like the name Chin Up Project, in essence, doesn't mean anything to me. It's an umbrella that under which, and it provides a forum for us to have conversations as real people. But we don't march in with a banner and a van covered in
We're Chin Up Project and we're here.
Yeah. We're here to save the day, mate. And so I think that makes it easier, and we certainly use ourselves as our own experiences and our story as a tool to kind of help unpack the topics that we talk about and extrapolate the learnings. And so through us sharing our story and our experiences, that the young people develop a rapport with us as they start to relate to little bits along the way, and exchange of vulnerability, so us coming in and making ourselves vulnerable by sharing our story, is a way to kind of get this conversation started.
Which is like the most important part in that whole process. I was pretty much explaining like
Yeah.
it doesn't happen immediately, but over time they familiarize your face. They just like, I don't know, there's something powerful. I think it's for a young person, they almost see that you actually care to a degree. So it's like, I don't know, it just allows for, I think that's a key to a relationship if there's mutual respect. If there isn't, it's just like, then what are we even really doing? Like, what sort of conversation are we trying to have? Like, am I telling you off? Am I doing what?
Yeah.
But when a young person's able to identify that you actually just want to speak to them and just be yourself, it encourages them to do the same rather than put in on an act.
When I was a teenager, and it's the same for many young people, I think a lot of people can relate to this, that when I looked at what the mainstream had to offer in terms of role models, and you know, kind of sources, if we're talking about young men, sources of like mature masculine wisdom, like generative, nurturing men, like you might find that we probably would have found really easily like 1,000 years ago, we're sitting around a fire or something. When I looked for sources of those, you know, there weren't any. I looked at the All Blacks. I didn't see myself in them. I looked at pop culture. I didn't see myself in those people. And there's kind of like a crossroads that can happen there. If you don't like have that source of like a relatable, someone who's relatable to you for experience and culture and a number of other reasons, you can find it in the wrong ways. Like you can find prestige within a cult, you know, within a culture that can lead you down some traps. I think we gravitate naturally to finding, you know, sources of prestige that kind of demonstrate cues of success and of having done well. We naturally look to learn, so like get our social learnings from them. And that's what we provide. So we provide, well, first of all, our aesthetic is very different. So like I look different than 99.9% of other people that come in and talk to people at schools. My brother has his entire head and his face covered in tattoos, as does our other bro, Louis. And so we offer that as like a, you know, point of relatability. People can look and they go, oh, these guys are a little bit different. What have they got to say? And then through, you know, sharing our story, we become more relatable. And then what we can demonstrate is how, you know, where we've had success in our life, where we've stuffed up, but what we've learned. And those are the social learnings that we're looking to pass on for young people who might not have seen themselves in the mainstream.
Straight up. And that's exactly why I do this. Because I was one of those individuals, couldn't identify with anyone. And especially where I grew up, it was a very country place. You know, there was no one that looked like me. Like, to find someone that looked like me, I had to go on the internet. And, like, this is early days of internet, so it's like the role models that I'm being shown are like 50 Cent and shit, which is great, but that's the first time that you've seen someone that you were able to identify with. And as a young person that's just found that for the first time, that will influence you negatively. Or like not that will, but that it did for me. And it took me a long time before I found somebody else who I could relate with, who was actually doing the right thing.
Yeah.
So that, which is just, to me, why I birthed this. And it's so sick to hear that's more or less the same thing that's got you guys doing it. And you took the question right out of my mouth, because that's literally what I was about to ask. I was like, what birthed it? But everything that you just said.
Yeah, it's that. And, you know, there's a number of conversations that then can happen when you're providing as that person to young people. And I mentioned, you know, an exchange of vulnerability. My older brother Todd, he worked in this. Like, he moved over late last year to work with me, and his experience is really unique. But one of the last jobs he did was for this program called Start Taranaki, which is a program that worked with young people coming out of youth residency, which is youth prison, and they would stay in this house called Hebron House, which is where my brother was locked up actually when he was a young person. So it was he came out of there. It was came out of lockup, and it was a drug rehab.
True.
So he has actually come full circle, and he ended up working there with a lot of the fathers, the sons of the guys who he was locked up with, which is real buzzy. But at that job, Start Taranaki, they used to take young people out in the bush, and like rural as fuck, you know, like
yeah, bro.
like there's no snakes, no spiders, but
There's fuck all to do.
you're out in the middle of nowhere. So
Literally.
he speaks to an exchange of vulnerability there. Like they were like the young people, they were reliant on the workers that to keep them alive. And kind of the workers were it was an exchange of vulnerability because the workers were kind of relying on them not to run off and die, because then the program would get cut. You know what I mean? But he also creates that like in the booth. So he's a rapper, and he acknowledges that kind of exchange of vulnerability in rapping, and that's a language that a lot of young people are really comfortable to make themselves vulnerable. But it's that's one forum. So we try and provide a forum by setting an example and kind of doing it ourselves, and then giving permission to others to do the same. And I think that's a really powerful conversation to have with young men, especially who haven't been provided that permission before often.
But bro, that's leading by example, but only you're a positive role model that's doing that. Because like you can tell someone's like, oh, go and do this. But if you don't show them how to do that, they're going to sit there and look at you and be like, I'm not doing that. And then like the minute you do it, they're like, oh, okay. So you do know what you're doing. Like, can you show me how to do da-da-da-da-da? And it's powerful because otherwise, what does that look like? Imagine I come to your gym and like, oh, Matt, go fucking kick that bag like this and shit. And you're just like, you've never done that. Like, why would I listen to you? Like, etc. But then if I came in and actually knew what I was doing and showed you how to do that, as a young person, you sit there and you're like, I want to learn what he's doing.
Yeah. Oh, I know what it looks like. So we can use martial arts as like a, analogy to look at. We can find analogies of martial arts that relate to Chin-Up Project often. And, one might be, I was working with this, I was helping one of my mates at one of his gyms in Melbourne. I was a student there, but I used to do a bit of coaching and stuff. And we had this guy that he hadn't been there for a long time, but he was like, man, I want to fight. Like, I want to fight. And he used to come and tell you every day. He's like, I really want to do it. And he was rocking up to training regularly. He got a fight booked. Dude disappears, like doesn't come in. He's not coming in. We're like texting him, where you at? He gets out the book of 1,000,001 excuses, rattles off a different one every night. The week of his fight, he comes in and he just looks like a shell of a man, right? Just a shell of a man. So the weight of his world, he's like, oh, like trembling, I need to talk to you. And when we take him aside, he just crumbles. He's like, oh, I can't stop thinking about the fight. I'm losing sleep. I'm so nervous. I don't think I can do it. And he's just like, he's carried the burden and the weight of all that anxiety and all that apprehension by himself, because he felt like that was what you did when you're a fighter, that you're stoic and you're strong. When in reality, if there was permission provided to him to be vulnerable and to have that discussion and say, hey man, this is how I'm feeling, we would have been able to tell him, guess what, mate? That's what everybody feels when they're going through the process. So I think, there's a lot, like I said, there's a lot of synergy between the two worlds. And, I'm able to then carry that over to my fighters. We'll often have a sit down in the ring and have a conversation, checking in with everybody, but also saying it's okay to come out and talk like amongst yourselves, share how you're feeling, especially if you've got a fight coming up and you're struggling with anxiety or fear, because everyone goes through that. And we together as a team, we can kind of tackle that rather than carry the burden yourself. That's really important, eh?
That's so, like, it's real, because you're encouraging people to speak up. And all through society, people say it all the time, like, speak up, speak up, speak up. But long story short, most people don't really even know what that looks like. The fact that you're able to identify that, take them to the space that they're actually really anxious about, and able to sit there together and unpack everything that they're feeling, it's powerful.
Yeah.
Because, like, I don't know why, but for some reason when we think like that in our heads, we think we're the only ones that have ever felt this way. And it wasn't until speaking to Jack was when I realised, like, no, like, all I see from, like, the fighter's perspective is you walking out, you G'ing yourself up, the stare downs, et cetera, et cetera. I don't see the after the fights where you're sitting there for an hour waiting for the doctor, like, in the worst pain. Like, you don't hear about all of those things. So it's great that there are people like yourself that acknowledge that and try to create teams of people to help other people going through that.
Yeah.
It's powerful. And if we had more of that in society, I think we would have lived in a different space now.
Yeah, sure.
But it's just, it is what it is. We've all had to walk our path, and here we all are now.
That's it, bro.
No, but bro, I know that's a sick program. And for any young person listening that has the opportunity to be part of it, like, sign up, because I know you do a lot of good. You do a lot of good. But then tell us a bit more about your fighting side of things.
Well, the fighting side of things. So I'm 36 or 37 now. So I started real late. I started fighting really late. I don't consider myself a fighter anymore. I was never a particularly. I was never going to be a champion. Although I've got like this doolally belt that doesn't mean anything over in Thailand that everyone makes jokes about, the Bangla Stadium world title. But you know, I started as I've always enjoyed martial arts. So like kickboxing, a lot of people don't see this, but kickboxing is like on free-to-air television in New Zealand. When I was growing up, like, it's real mainstream, like in your face, in house. So I've always enjoyed it, and I need me as a person, I need the opportunity to step outside and challenge myself. Like, I have to have that. If I don't have that, I get distracted with other stuff. Like, I have to have that in my life, right? And it really provided me that for a long time. I tend to get it vicariously now. Like, I had this fight versus one of Jack's mates. It was actually my professional MMA debut. I was pretty unfortunate. I broke my hand really early and wrecked my hand to a point that it's really arthritic these days. So I guess it's one of the things about starting old, that I've had a couple injuries. I fought in Thailand in August and damaged my eye. I can't see properly. One of my eyes now.
Shit.
So it's I've been pretty unfortunate there, but blessed in many other areas of fighting, and am now in a position where I can live almost vicariously through others and still get what I need out of it. And coaching for me is incredibly fulfilling. It's I don't pay myself a salary from the gym. I might one day, but it's just me doing me these days. I really enjoy seeing other people, find themselves within the sport. I think, as coaches, we become so invested in our people, and you had Chris Bradford here the other day, and I've got this image that sticks in my head. So I was commentating the show, and we've done some commentary together. I was commentating the show at the Malvern Town Hall, and he had one of his boys, Isaac Tomlinson, fighting, and he was over to my right as I was commentating. I just remember, like, the look that Chris had looking on, watching his fighter fight. Like, he would do anything in that moment to be in there taking the punches for him.
True.
Like, he was just so invested in seeing his guy do well, and just like had so much emotion coursing through him in that moment. I was like, yeah, that's it, like that's who we are as coaches. And if you don't have that, then maybe you're not in the right gig, So it's I still get plenty out of fighting, even though it's not me in there anymore. But old and fat and slow these days.
No, like, bro, like, I did not think you were that old. That's for sure. Like, you don't look it. Like,
I moisturise, so, I drink plenty of water.
Well, it's that New Zealand water. It's a bit different. It hits a bit better, doesn't it?
Yeah.
No, but like, it's sick, and I think there's so much power in coaching, and like all I can do is relate back to myself in that situation. I found myself that I enjoy that more. Instead of me going out and playing like competitive sports, I'm like, I'd rather upskill my little brothers and me have to go through that myself.
Yeah.
I don't know what happened, but just somewhere along the line, I just lost the passion to compete in those environments.
Yeah.
And so I'd much rather take the role of facilitate people that do want to compete in those environments. Because you know just a little bit, but enough that like everything that you've experienced, all I can do is pass that on to help him or to help them in their journey going wherever they're going to.
Well, I also know I'm a far better coach than I am a fighter. Always ever going to be. Like what I know better than anything in this world is people, and it's that skill that was it didn't come in, I didn't inherit that. Like it was something that was born through experience. Like when you face hardships and you go through challenges, and many times you're in a room where it's like you have to know what's going on. Like you need to know what other people are after and what their motivations are. That equips you really well in life. And a lot of this is where I think young people can recognize value if you can help them to see it. Is that what, all the shit that you've been through, it's golden when it comes to navigating the adult world. Emotional intelligence is far more critical to success in life than having academically gifted. And it's those skills that then carry over and allow me to be a good coach and to know what people need at that right moment. But also then the love and the fascination of fighting. I used to have an MMA podcast a little while ago with my brother. Like, man, I just love that shit.
True.
I love to watch fighting. I like when I've got spare time, when I'm taking a shit, I'm like on the phone watching fights. When I'm going to bed, I'm watching fights. Like it's just my jam. My wife is a professional fighter. She's a really good fighter. So I think she's just entered a professional fighting realm. She's 3-0 as a professional.
Plugger.
Yeah, bro. So her name's Lani Bones Williams. So I've got bones on my forehead there, but she's pretty incredible. So she's 35. She's a mum. She's a business owner. Like she makes engagement rings, has 4 staff that work for her, and still finds the time to be a fighter. That's pretty dope.
That's nuts.
And so I coach her, and we somehow manage to balance the husband and wife, coacher and fighter thing, and haven't had an argument yet. So we're doing all right there. But
she probably takes it out on you when you're holding the pads.
That's it. Yeah, kick me in the balls accidentally. Oh, sorry.
If it provides an opportunity to release, it's like you couldn't have done anything better than that.
Yeah. It's so dope, man.
That's
so
sick. And then I know you said something really interesting too, but just in understanding people, like you explain why that's so important. But in your journey through that, what are some key things that you think people should know about people, if that makes sense?
Well, I think it's a bit simpler than that. I think it's it just comes down to empathy at the end of the day, and I'm not 100% sure that is empathy is something that is can be learned. I don't know that, but it's certainly a gift, and when you acknowledge it as a skill within yourself, then it carries currency in a whole different set of life's challenges, And
what does empathy look like to you, or like in your interpretation of it?
Well, understanding and acknowledging where other people are at and what they need, and being kind and being understanding of others' points of view, and being able to kind of construct your own in consideration and choosing your approach to a relationship in consideration of where they're at. But I think, empathy, there's a whole different range of contexts that it can be explored in, professional to fighting. And I was out at a school recently. I don't do keynote speaking as much as I used to, but I was talking to a group of like 100 odd students at Torquay Secondary, year 11s, and I chucked this video up, and the it goes for about 2 or 3 minutes, and it showcases, the highs and lows of MMA. So it's got like, people winning the bout, people losing the bout, people getting bashed, and then, people, being embraced by their corner. And I use that as a tool to, in my keynote speech, to kind of unpack, what's different about those people and who the other person is to them in that moment. And so this is really interesting about empathy and about fighting, and I think something that only fighters might understand, but we can allow others allow others kind of a glimpse into it, is that in that moment, and like fighting, when you're fighting someone, it's the weirdest thing. Like, you and the other person, that person is the only person in that moment who understands and has empathy for what the position you're in, because you've both walked the exact, you've both walked a similar path to get there, similar challenges, you've made sacrifices, but also in that moment, you're the only other person who can give that moment. So there's this very real, deep empathy for where the other person is, although you're going to try and kick their head off. That's it's because of that, and out of respect for the other person's process, that you often see kind of that show of camaraderie afterwards, like the hugging, like picking the other person up off the ground, the deep respect. I think that's born, like that's the deepest demonstration of empathy that can really be found in like the sporting arena, is like when two combatants fight.
Bro, I hear that completely, because we just had the UFC yesterday.
Yeah.
I noticed that. I can't remember there's the two women that were fighting.
Yeah.
But after every round, they would acknowledge each other. And it was nuts. In my head, I'm like, she's literally been on top of you, like trying to ground and pound her. The minute you get up, you will fist pump each other and then walk back to your corners. Yeah. And then it wasn't, I haven't had that ability to relate. I don't know what it's like to go through a training camp. And just everything that you guys have gone through, you've gone through it together, because one of you has to win and one of you has to lose. But you're both putting in as much work as you can to achieve the same outcome.
Yep.
It's actually nuts. And it gets a lot deeper than that, because it's low-key life too.
Yeah.
Like, someone has to win and someone will lose. It's really like what happens when you experience either of those things.
Yeah, and so then we can start having a conversation. I love to use MMA and fighting as an example. It's just so primal. Like, everybody gets it on some level, like it's about intrinsic to human nature as you can get, like
it's hunter or gatherer almost.
Oh yeah,
it's like, literally, it's like, you're a hunter, we'll see.
It's so primal, yeah. So everybody's going to get it on some level, even if they're disgusted, disgusted by it. It's probably they're disgusted by it because they don't want to acknowledge that part of themselves. But I forgot what we were talking about.
Just how it's so much deeper than that. The winning and losing. Someone has to win,
yes.
someone has to lose.
And afterwards, it's so we can use that as an example of saying, it's the story that we tell ourselves about the win or the loss that really matters. Is the when you lose, do you make excuses? Is it the other person's fault, or the camp's fault, or your diet's fault, or the ref's fault, or the judge's fault? Or are you like, yeah, man, it sucks to lose, and I'm sore right now, but because of all my mistakes, I get opportunity now to come back and be better from it? Or is it in loss? Do we tell ourselves the story about, hey, look, you know what? It sucks to lose, but look at all the cool people that I've got around me that are like picking me back up and seeing value in that. Certainly, it's been in my losses more so than my victories that I've learnt the most about myself and that I'm the most grateful for.
And then I was going to give other examples, but I guess the perfect one would be, what did you learn about yourself when you lost? Just in those time periods, whether you won or lost, like, what are the key things that you really learnt about yourself in those time periods?
Yeah, it depends on like where I was at. Like the first time I lost, the first time I lost, I was putting heaps of value in the win and what that meant. And afterwards, I came back out to the back room And my brain had been pretty rattled. Like I got ground and pound out, and my orbital was fractured, and like I was pretty smashed up. My nose was all smashed up, and I was sitting at the back. And I spoke. It was in Queensland, and my wife called, and I was talking to my wife, and then she put my son on the phone, and like in that moment, I just burst out into tears. Like I was talking to like my 2-year-old son, and that with that in that moment, it was like a real demonstration to me of what's important and like kind of why you do it. And the fact is, man, in 20 years, no one's going to remember your record. So there needs to be a better reason that you do it for. If you're just doing it for wins, you're not doing it for the right reasons. And it kind of loss brought it home to me of why do you do this? But I've lost it. I've had other losses at other times that have had similar but different lessons attached to them. But each time it's an opportunity to learn something, right? And that's the story that I tell myself and I encourage others to recognise.
I hear that completely, bro. Because you think in that small time period that it's over. What have I done? Blah, 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 blah. And then you're sitting there, even though you're all smashed up, the phone call comes in and it's a reminder of why you wake up every day and like you put in all the work.
Yeah.
And then it's nuts because I'm thinking about it. When that thought goes through your mind, it'll take off so much pressure.
Yeah.
Because you're like, I didn't end up fortunate enough tonight. Well, shit. At least I've got 2 of my biggest supporters back home, like just encouraging me, waiting for me to come back home. And they don't care whether or not you win or lost. Like they're going to support you through that journey.
Yep.
No, it's sick, Matt. You sound like you've got really good people around you the whole way now.
Yeah.
Which is important. And everything that you're doing is a demonstration of that. Like you haven't just held on to all those tools and just kept them for yourself. But instead you're doing your best. You're trying to uplift your whole community as well.
Yeah.
And that, I wish you all the best with that and I hope you continue doing it.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much, man.
It's sick.
Yeah.
But I'm curious. I think we're now at that time of the day. Like the one question I ask everyone.
Yeah.
Matt, what's one thing that you wish you were told as a youth?
See, this is a tricky question, and it's not the first time I've been asked it. Because I run an exercise with young people where I get to imagine themselves in 10 years in the best possible circumstances and put themselves in the shoes of that version of themselves and then to offer themselves advice. So to flip the shoes, sit around a chair and offer themselves advice. And sometimes they'll go, well, what would you tell yourself? And it is different for me because I am older. Like it's not a future version of myself. And I am, as someone who's grateful for all the shit and all the blessings and all the challenges and all the mistakes, those experiences being those from which I've now amassed my wisdom and created my identity and I am who I am, I wouldn't want it any different. So I wouldn't want to give myself a piece of advice that would detract me from having those hard times, although what the burden I do carry is all the the pain that I've caused others in my life. So and often to myself as well. So if I was to go back and offer myself advice as a teenager, I would say be kinder. Be kind to yourself, be kind to others. And I think by doing both those things, my life would be a lot easier in the right ways, but I would have saved others some pain too. Being kind and recognizing value in our own existence and making as part of making better decisions for ourselves at the end of the day. So and being kindness and helping others and doing things for others is something that gives me enormous satisfaction these days.
That's real. I hear you loud and clear as well. Like there's honestly not too much that I would have gone back and said, just other than just don't be a dick to those certain people. Like it just wasn't required and I didn't have to do that. But still went there, did it, reaped the consequence. So it's just like, it's helped shape who we are today.
100%, yeah.
And it's important, at least we can go back and acknowledge those times as well. And fuck, sorry to anybody that we hurt too. It's just like, it's like we alleviate ourselves.
Yeah.
No, but that's
Hashtag don't be a dick.
Literally. That would be a movement though, wouldn't it?
Yeah, but probably.
Like it's just, under all your photos, instead of saying something negative, it's just hashtag don't be a dick.
Yeah.
We should, fuck, that'd be sick. If that kicked off,
put it on a mug, put it on a cap, put it on a bumper sticker, bro. We'll make some cash. Get out of here.
Not only that, just
buy a jet ski.
Defeat one internet troll at a time.
Yeah.
Just one internet troll at a time. It's like we'll be there all day, but it's like at least we now have one thing to defeat them.
Take you down, motherfucker.
Literally. But Matt, tell the people where they can find you, bro.
I'm not going to tell everyone where they can find me, but if I wasn't a dick to you when I was growing up, you can find me and learn more about our project. There's a lot to it. We're rebranding as the Contender Project as a not-for-profit next year. But you can find us at www.thechinupproject.com. We're also on Instagram as The Contender Program. Or you can find us at www.theboneyardtorquay.com, and we use the same Instagram, the Boneyard Torquay. You can find a little bit about us there. Otherwise, you can just find us in community from Wyndham to the Hume to Broady, and hopefully next year a bit more in the Geelong region as well. As my bro moves down, we're going to get some work done out these ways.
Bro, you will. And I'm whatever we can do to help along the way, let us know.
Thank you, brother.
More than happy to offer whatever we can.
Thank you, man.
But shit, is there anything else you want to tell the people?
No, I went to, it was my son's last day of prep today.
True.
Yeah, and he's the only kid that went through this year at school with a rat style. So just hold it down for the rat styles out there. If you're thinking about it, start growing it now.
Because the time will come.
Yeah, time will come.
Take advantage of it now because you won't get your time later.
Nah, well, see, don't live with regrets like me.
No, bro, you got no regrets. You're doing nothing but you're doing the Lord's work now, bro. You really are, and that Lord's wherever you want it to be, and it's just great that you were able to find that within yourself and teach it to others. And I wish you nothing but the best with
Thanks,
all
bro.
that, brother.
Enjoy your Christmas bombs,
bro. Fuck. Let's pop one on camera. I don't know how it'll go, but let's figure it out. Matt rocking up with gifts and shit.
All right.
Bang.
This is bullshit.
Yeah. Ended up with the shit side of things.
Yeah, what's the joke, bro?
Oh, fuck. This is... Oh, why do I have to get this and why do I have to be the one to say it?
Yeah.
What did the policeman say to his stomach?
Oh, shit. Go on, what?
You're under a vest.
That guy. That guy.
That just takes away from absolutely everything we said. It's just fuck us, right? It's just Jesus.
All right, thanks for having me, man.
No worries at all. But shit, I think that's another episode of Different Kind of Genius done and dusted. Big thank you to all our sponsors. Kufé in the Streets Barbershop. Look after them because they look after us. And Matt, thank you, my brother. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, bro.
Thank you.
Good man.
Liam, you know what to do. Do that shit.